I'm glad when we left you last week on Thursday night, we were not at war, and today we are at war. We are at war. And yeah, I used to say the one thing that surprised me about Donald Trump in a good way is that he hadn't gotten us into any wars.
Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not.
Donald Trump's hold on the political stage suddenly looks far less steady at the exact moment he's trying to project even stronger authority. And the reaction across newsrooms and late-night studios has been a mix of shock and fascination. One television host in particular has stepped forward as an unexpectedly relentless critic, calmly breaking down Trump's decisions, reversals, and bold claims with a blend of humor and genuine disbelief that keeps audiences watching closely. What makes the situation even stranger is that this criticism is not coming from someone campaigning for a rival candidate. Instead, it comes from satire, the kind usually meant for entertainment, which is now turned into a spotlight exposing moments where presidential messaging appears to stumble. It raises an interesting question that many viewers are starting to ask. When did comedy begin acting like a magnifying glass for political leadership? Can a well-placed joke actually influence how the public views power? And what happens when that comedic mirror keeps reflecting the same uncomfortable patterns again and again without ever looking away?
Shortly, and if you're watching in bed at the White House, you might want to stay up because we are definitely going to be talking about you, girl. Okay? President Donald Trump did find time between bombings yesterday to post what the New York Post called apocalyptic footage of San Francisco.
Got great reviews. I can't believe it. We got good reviews in that speech. Usually they say he's a horrible dictator type person. I'm a dictator. But sometimes you need a dictator. But they didn't say that in this case. And no, it's common sense. It's all based on common sense.
Before we go further, if you are enjoying this breakdown, take a moment to subscribe to the channel because that small click genuinely helps more than most people realize. Now, back to the story. The week was supposed to feel like a victory parade for Trump. Another stretch of confident speeches, bold gestures, and repeated assurances that everything was firmly under control. The expectation was clear. He would project strength, dominate headlines, and move forward as usual. But instead of looking like another chapter of political dominance, the situation slowly began to resemble a scramble to manage fallout. What was meant to appear polished started feeling messy. And somewhere in the middle of that shift, the sharp instincts of late-night television picked up on the tension almost immediately, sensing that something worth dissecting had just landed directly in their lane.
It's a book I wrote for my kids.
Speaking of kids, my daughter, who was in the 4th grade last year, they have a 4th grade trip up to the state capitol with her class, and she came home raving about you. And I was cracking up because I didn't think she was gonna meet you. You know, they're like, yeah, we're going up to the Capitol, and then the whole class went into your office, and they saw a Trump pen on your desk. And my daughter was like, oh, he's a Trumper. And then you came in and made a joke about Trump. I don't know, is there like a joke that you tell the kids about Trump?
I don't have like a standard joke, but the joke was, it's interesting, that pen.
Here is the reality about power that people often forget. It tends to look completely unshakable right up until the moment someone begins replaying the receipts. For years, Donald Trump has built his political persona around the idea of strength. Strength during negotiations, strength at the border, strength in international conflicts, and strength even when critics tried to tear him down. The branding was simple and easy to recognize: a leader who acts quickly, speaks confidently, and never hesitates. To his supporters, he looked like a relentless fighter willing to challenge anyone. To his critics, he often appeared chaotic and unpredictable. Yet despite those opposing interpretations, there was one perception both sides largely shared. Rarely did anyone accuse him of hesitation.
In retrospect, we should have seen this coming 2 weeks ago when he convened the first meeting of his new Board of Peace. He met with the Board of Peace 8 days later, we're at war. Turns out they probably should have just given him that Nobel Prize. I mean, remember Star Wars R2-D2's playing chess with Chewbacca and C-3PO suggests he let the Wookiee win? We should have let the Wookiee win. Now we have no arms. Poor Guillermo, and I know it was a tough weekend.
That is exactly why the latest developments have felt different to so many observers. People believed they understood Trump's leadership style. Make bold decisions, refuse to apologize, and seize control of the narrative before anyone else even finishes asking the question. It was a playbook built around speed, confidence, and dominating the conversation before critics had time to shape it.
Ayatollah is pulling out all the stops lately. Team Trump was on Capitol Hill today to brief Congress about the strikes on Iran. Usually, that happens before we invade a country, but technically only Congress has the power to declare war, but also technically you're supposed to get a permit to tear down the East Wing of the White House, and they're not gonna get bogged down in technicalities with this group. The president sent a letter to lawmakers in which he claimed that it is too soon to know the full scope and duration.
But leadership is not only about sounding confident in the moment, it also depends on staying consistent over time. Once that consistency begins to wobble even slightly, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore, especially when someone with a national platform is eager to point it out. This is where Jimmy Kimmel steps into the picture, a host who has practically turned sarcasm into a nightly tradition. Late-night comedy has always flirted with politics, but in recent years, it has moved far beyond casual jokes. On Jimmy Kimmel Live, the opening monologue has quietly evolved into something sharper, almost like a running commentary on political contradictions, delivered through humor and raised eyebrows. Kimmel often presents it with the kind of smile that suggests he cannot believe how much material keeps falling into his lap. But to understand how this moment developed, we have to rewind a little. Explanations from the administration began shifting. The tone of the discussion hardened, and critics started asking a very simple question. Wasn't the original promise to avoid situations exactly like this one? In politics, it is normal for policies to change as circumstances evolve. Intelligence updates, global situations shift, and leaders adjust strategies. That part is expected. What stands out, however, is when those adjustments seem to clash directly with statements that were once delivered with absolute certainty.
He signed a piece of paper for you and handed it to you, right?
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, look, where do we even begin?
Give this to your kids?
Give this to your kids. I mean, thank you, sir. What a gift. This is what they've been missing in their lives. And
handed
handed
my daughter Jane a set of keys for whatever reason.
The key to, well, that was the key to San Francisco, the key to city. By the way, she has the key to my heart. She's amazing. I did not know that was your daughter.
She said to you, I can't be trusted with.
That is usually the moment when late-night television reaches into the archives. Kimmel did not need exaggeration or over-the-top storytelling to make his point. Instead, he simply placed earlier statements next to current actions and allowed viewers to notice the contrast for themselves. The result felt less like a traditional comedy sketch and more like a reminder of recent political memory. And that is where the discomfort began creeping in. When a president builds his reputation on unwavering confidence, even the suggestion that things are inconsistent can become politically dangerous. The tensions surrounding the escalation with Iran were only one piece of a larger puzzle. Questions about transparency, disagreements inside the administration, and evolving explanations began circulating through news coverage. Analysts debated timing, motivations, and strategic clarity across television panels and online discussions. Supporters argued the decisions showed strength and quick action. Critics described the same moves as reckless. The irony almost wrote its own punchline. Trump responded the way he typically does when under pressure, by firing back at his critics. Late-night hosts became frequent targets, television networks were accused of bias, and familiar accusations flew across social media and interviews. It was territory he had navigated many times before, yet somehow the atmosphere around this round of criticism carried a slightly different feeling.
That's right. They did it in concert with Israeli forces. It required intense secrecy, which is why Donald Trump watched it unfold from his membership-only beach resort in Florida, from the very spot on which, just 2 months ago, Vanilla Ice performed on stage with a Ninja Turtle, just as the prophecy foretold. The president monitored the attack from his super secure bunker at Mar-a-Lago. Don't worry, I'm sure these fabric curtains are totally soundproof.
The shift became clearer because it was not only comedians raising questions anymore. Polling numbers began hinting at a subtle sense of unease. Independent voters, that unpredictable group that often decides elections, started showing signs of fatigue. The long-standing narrative of strength was beginning to clash with the appearance of unpredictability. While unpredictability might be thrilling in entertainment, it tends to make people nervous when international politics is involved. The exchange between Trump and the late-night world kept intensifying. Kimmel sharpened his commentary, but avoided turning it into cartoonish mockery. Instead, he settled into a rhythm that audiences quickly recognized. First came a reminder of something previously said, followed by a comparison to what was happening now. That steady pattern resonated strongly with viewers. The real influence of satire is not that it directly changes policy decisions. Its impact lies in shaping how people interpret events. When an audience laughs at a contradiction, the message often sinks in deeper than a complicated policy explanation ever could. Humor lowers defenses and transforms heavy political analysis into simple, memorable moments. Meanwhile, leaders within the Democratic Party noticed the opening and leaned into it. They did not need an elaborate counter-message because the contradictions were already spreading across media platforms. Clips from late-night shows traveled quickly through social networks, repeating the same comparisons again and again. That is when a noticeable shift began to appear. Trump has always been incredibly skilled at dominating headlines, and in many ways, chaos has been his natural environment. But chaos only benefits a leader when it looks like they are the one controlling it.
Conflict. Now, on Sunday, he said it could last 4 to 5 weeks. Yesterday, he said it could be more than 4 to 5 weeks. Today, he said it's too soon to know, and tomorrow, we'll be shooting for Christmas, I guess. However long it takes until everyone stops talking about how many times his name is in the Trump-Epstein files. That's how, and one of the concerns that has been raised is that dropping all these bombs could deplete our weapons reserves.
Once that chaos begins defining you instead of the other way around, the balance starts to tilt. Kimmel seemed to sense that moment and treated the situation less like a one-time joke and more like an unfolding storyline. Each monologue built on the previous one. Each new episode added another layer of context. Each callback reinforced the same central theme, that leadership requires consistency. His sarcasm remained controlled and deliberate. When discussing shifting explanations, he leaned into the absurdity of sudden reversals. When touching on foreign policy bravado, he compared it with earlier cautionary statements. There was no shouting or dramatic theatrics, only calm disbelief delivered with humor. That approach mattered more than it might seem. Loud outrage can easily be dismissed as partisan anger, but quiet mockery tends to linger longer in people's minds. At the same time, Trump's rallies continued drawing energetic crowds, and his supporters remained intensely loyal. The core base showed no signs of fracturing. Yet outside that circle, the wider electorate watched the media back and forth like a cultural chess match. Some viewers saw a fearless leader adapting to new realities. Others saw politicians struggling to reconcile his current decisions with earlier promises. Kimmel never tried to answer that debate directly. He simply kept holding up the mirror.
You know, a lot of Democrats, you hear this a lot, and I'm probably one of them, who complain that that leaders of our party are not fighting back hard enough. Yeah. And then you led this effort to pass Prop 50, which added districts to the state of California and to counteract what was going on in Texas.
And that mirror gradually became harder to ignore. There is something uniquely powerful about criticism delivered by entertainers rather than policy experts. When that happens, it signals that a political story has crossed from government debate into the broader culture. Once it reaches that level, a leader is no longer just defending policy choices, they are defending how those choices are perceived by the public. Trump attempted to shift the conversation by questioning the credibility of late-night television itself. He portrayed the hosts as political activists pretending to be comedians. Strategically, the idea made sense. If you weaken the credibility of the critic, the criticism itself might lose impact. Yet that strategy has limitations because viewers do not tune in to late-night shows expecting policy lectures. They watch for entertainment. Any single example might have been easy to brush aside, but taken together, the moments began forming a recognizable pattern, and patterns are exactly what satire thrives on. What made this clash interesting was not a dramatic televised confrontation or fiery debate. Instead, it unfolded slowly as a quiet contest over credibility. Kimmel relied on past statements to highlight consistency issues. Trump relied on defiance to push back. The audience observed both sides playing their roles.
Moving so fast with this is that they want to finish the job before we run out of munitions. But don't worry, President Donald J. Rumsfeld says we are locked and loaded for the long haul. He says the United States munition stockpiles have, at the medium and upper medium grade, never been higher or better. As was stated to me today, we have a virtually unlimited supply of these weapons. Wars can be fought forever and very successfully using just these bullets. Oh good, the war can be fought forever. That's exactly what we wanted to hear.
Beneath the humor, however, a much bigger question began forming. What does it say about modern politics when late-night television becomes a central stage for holding leaders accountable? In earlier decades, presidents worried most about tough newspaper editorials. Today, they also worry about viral monologues that spread across the internet overnight. A single 5-minute segment can influence how an entire week of headlines is interpreted. A perfectly timed punchline can capture public skepticism far faster than any policy document ever could. This is where the real tension sits. Trump thrives on spectacle and understands media cycles better than many career politicians. He knows how to provoke attention, shift focus, and dominate coverage. Satire works differently. Instead of chasing outrage, it reframes it. When Kimmel analyzed the Iran escalation, he did not debate military strategy. He focused on consistency. Consistency sits at the center of public trust. His approach was careful and controlled. The goal was never to shout louder than anyone else. It was simply to raise questions. And raised eyebrows can be surprisingly powerful in politics. At the same time, Trump's supporters viewed the criticism as predictable hostility from media institutions that never supported him in the first place. That belief continues to resonate strongly with his base.
The ceiling is open. Trump probably just came in from the golf course. He's sitting there. He's sweating like a yam in a hat. And for whatever reason, they released a photo with a map in the background that revealed all the Iranian-American target locations, which surprises me. It's not like them to be sloppy. He launched a top-secret military strike from the same kind of enclosure they use to sell hummus at a farmer's market. You know, people stay at Mar-a-Lago. They have guests on site.
Swing voters, however, tend to judge situations differently because loyalty alone does not guide their decisions. They look for coherence. Does the story make sense from start to finish? Do actions align with earlier promises? Does leadership appear steady and dependable? Those questions are not always easy to dismiss with humor or slogans. As the weeks passed, the standoff settled into a strange routine. Trump projected confidence and strength. Kimmel projected doubt and skepticism. Cable news amplified both perspectives, while social media dissected every clip and comment. The clash was not explosive, but it was constant, and constant repetition can sometimes have a stronger impact than a single dramatic moment. Night after night, viewers were reminded of the contrast. Week after week, the same comparisons circulated online. In politics, repetition slowly shapes public perception. So where does that leave the situation now? Kimmel's method was surprisingly simple, yet effective. He highlighted contradictions and allowed viewers to draw their own conclusions. In an era overflowing with information, where accountability can easily become blurred, even comedic clarity can carry real influence. The deeper lesson extends beyond one host or one president. It reflects how the landscape of power itself has changed. Leadership today is judged not only inside government briefings or at the ballot box, it is also evaluated in viral clips, late-night monologues, and cultural conversations.
It's like the war his stomach is fighting with his pants. It will go on. Now listen, I'm not an expert in this, but I'm pretty sure our military doesn't have unlimited weapons. It's a stockpile. It's not the buffet at the Golden Corral. You know, last night I mentioned that the only good thing I could say about Trump, before Saturday anyway, was that he didn't start any wars. And I'm not the only one who felt this way. We found this op-ed from the Wall Street Journal in 2023, written by a senator who said he was endorsing Trump because, quote, "I know he won't recklessly send Americans to fight overseas."
Politics is no longer confined to Congress or campaign rallies, because culture itself has become part of the battlefield, and culture has a remarkable memory when it is constantly reminded of past moments. As another election cycle slowly approaches, one quiet question continues floating beneath the sarcasm. Can a leader maintain an image of unshakable strength when archived footage repeatedly resurfaces to complicate the story? Trump's response appears consistent with his long-standing strategy. He leans directly into confrontation, reframes criticism as proof that he remains relevant, and often treats mockery as motivation rather than a setback. Kimmel's approach is just as straightforward but moves in the opposite direction. Keep replaying the past. No shouting, no dramatic speeches, simply repeat the record. Sometimes steady repetition becomes the sharpest tool of all, because when the spotlight remains focused long enough, even the most carefully crafted image begins to show small cracks. In the end, the real story is not that a late-night host made jokes about a president. The White House communication machine continues running. Allies defend their positions, opponents launch their criticisms. Yet somewhere within the larger cultural conversation, a quiet question keeps circulating. It is not shouted or screamed, it is simply asked again and again, is the narrative still holding together? And every night beneath studio lights and audience laughter, that question returns, calmly, sarcastically, and persistently. In modern politics, that kind of quiet doubt can sometimes echo louder than any speech, because strength often announces itself loudly, while uncertainty has a habit of whispering.